Hello and welcome to a special HouseCast. Today we will be looking at the gameplay and systems in SAROS. With me I have Matti Häkli, and your title was,
Associate Design Director.
which is too long for me to remember, and Abebe, what's your title?
Lead game designer.
Lead game designer. And
Combat
Yeah.
enemies.
enemy special. Yeah, so I'll ask you enemy questions and I'll ask Matti all the general stuff and everything. But yeah, we're here now playing SAROS, which is out. Go get it. It's a very special Housemarque game with a lot of action and bullets and stuff. But what does it all mean? Especially the action and the bullets. So let's get into that. Matti, how do you look at the holistic perspective when you design a game like this? Because there's a very active second-to-second loop, but then that has to tie in to the growth and progress and unlocks and everything. Is it a complicated system, or do you try to focus on each layer at a time, or how do you see it?
It is a very complicated system, or actually multiple systems. At first, I usually try to get a better holistic view. What is the overall goal? With SAROS, definitely one of the biggest things was the approachability. We wanted to make sure that more players can enjoy the game. They have meaningful ways of addressing friction and challenge in the game. So this was maybe the backbone for all the progression design and all the options that we offer in that sense.
That was a return or learning point, because a lot of people got stuck in the first boss in that game. So we understood that let's rethink the beginning of it at least.
Yeah,
But I think it applies to the whole player experience in the end.
exactly. And approachability, especially for Housemarque, it doesn't mean making the game easier. It's more about giving more agency and having options and giving the player more room to learn the mechanics and understand how the game is played. What are we asking them to do?
Yeah. And overall, I mean, every time you complete the run, you very much know that you're gaining something. So I think that's the end of the loop, where it's a net positive. Except with Returnal, it might have been that, but not many people realize that it's actually giving you some things in the long term.
Yeah, Returnal actually had many similar systems that we currently do, but they were kind of hidden in the background, and most of the players never understood how it works, especially if they didn't get far enough in the game that they could see the benefits. So we wanted to make that progression more visible, and I think we really delivered on the Come Back Stronger promise that every run is valuable and beneficial to the player. You can keep improving. It's not only the permanent progression, but also the skills of the player. That we have such challenges and skill checks in the game that when you get past those points, you definitely have learned something new.
Absolutely.
game.
Well, there's some new things in the game. It's funny to say new because this is the first of an IP. But if you think about Housemarque wise, the shield mechanic is a very central new feature that changes the dynamic of bullet. It adds interaction to just avoidance gameplay. Do you think that's the biggest fundamental change, or do you see other, or does that take most of the depth and time from a design perspective?
It is one of them, and maybe the most impactful one. Returnal was all about avoidance gameplay. Just avoid all the damage. That was the game, basically. With the shield that we added here, it completely changes the dynamics of the game, that it turns the obstacle course into a playground, and you have more opportunities to create openings and really figure out different approaches to the enemies rather than trying to avoid and stay away from the enemies. So one of the key things we wanted to achieve was more aggressive playstyle, really pushing every player to be more aggressive, go towards the enemy, don't back away. And I think the shield really manages to do that because it gives you safety, but also more power when you use it correctly.
Yeah. And overall, it's a central thing to using your power weapon as well.
Yep.
which is kind of new compared to Returnal, where you only had a primary weapon, and of course the alt fire and everything gave it some dual use cases. But here, you have like doubled your weapon arsenal that you can carry with you in a way.
Yeah, and we really wanted to change the go away from typical cooldowns that are just timer based. We wanted to ask the player to do something to gain the power, to gain the opportunities to use the power weapon, and it works really well. I'm super happy about it.
And it works well with the character, right? The protagonist is a very different one from Returnal. The aggressive style, the enforcer mentality, I think ties into the whole narrative loop and the way that Arjun kind of approaches the world.
Yeah,
So-
absolutely. Celine was a scientist, Arjun is a soldier, and we wanted to make the game feel like that. Like you're powerful, you're not afraid of facing the enemies and taking the challenge. You're powerful, and we wanted to make that power fantasy to really feel. And
Can I ask you a very personal question?
go ahead.
If you think about this game, let's say that people have high expectations. I would like to hear one thing that you see in the game as something where we've taken ordinary to excellent. Something that really, lifts up either the design, the gameplay, or just an improvement that you had a hand in that really kind of shines, at least, feels that for you. Anything come to mind?
That's easy for me. I think it's the auto hits. Returnal had the auto hits, but again, it wasn't very visible. Not all the players understood how it works.
Now, auto hit, you mean auto aim, or is it different?
It is different. Like, it's way different from typical auto aim where basically the game helps you to aim the enemies. There's friction and maybe some snapping, but with the auto hits, the point is that the game handles the precision aiming for you. So we basically never require you to be precise. Accuracy is just a benefit that if you have those skills, you get more damage by aiming better, but the auto hit will make sure that the bullets hit the enemies. So by this, we're kind of lowering the cognitive load of the player, that if you're struggling with the avoidance gameplay and interacting with the bullets, on top of that being precise and hitting those weak points, like that would be a massive challenge to many players. And often players focus on the aiming, which means that they wouldn't be focusing on the avoidance gameplay. And in this game, in Returnal, like that's a mistake. Like avoidance and just keep moving and finding your openings and like keep moving and playing like that. That's the key.
The auto hit, which is different from auto aim, is also a thing that some weapons have a proclivity to do more, some do less, and then I think some of the modifiers add to it, or how it has some extent that it can be also played around with, right?
Abebe probably can talk more about the modifiers, but
Yeah.
we do have certain weapons that completely disable the auto hit. Those are like for the core players and skilled players who have the skills.
And I'm guessing later in the player journey you introduce those, right?
You will encounter those, and they are labeled clearly, so you know that if I'm picking this up, you get notified that the auto hit is disabled. But we have already seen that the auto hit is perceived better. Like players tend to disable all the aim assists usually in the games, but in this game, like we really wanted to make sure that the players give it a chance, that it's not in your way when you have the skills, but when you don't, like you're fine using it and having fun with the game.
Maybe we jump into the Black Dam of the Blighted Marsh. I think it's a good area. Maybe you can introduce the area once you jump into it.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of excellent biomes here, and I think this is right after that one boss with the hook shots, right? Or is it before? I forget.
This should be right after.
Did you put any modifiers on as well?
I did, yes.
Okay.
So the idea with the modifiers is that we wanted to give players a way of kind of augmenting the difficulty of the game without just turning it to, easy mode, as you might say, right? So the idea is that you make some parts of the game harder and some parts of it easier to kind of keep the balance. So the ones I turned on, for example, I turned on a modifier that makes so that Halcyon, one of our permanent resources, doesn't drop in the world.
Right.
But as a result, I was able to turn on a modifier that made me do much more damage to enemies. So in this case, I'm kind of sacrificing temporarily my permanent progression to get more power, to overcome like a difficulty spike.
So that would be a way to get through a difficult boss fight or something that you have in the game.
Exactly.
And the whole Carcosan modifiers is a thing that you unlock a couple of levels into the game as well. And then if you're yearning for more challenge, you can look into it. But if you're realizing that you may need a little bit of assistance, then that is also an option. Matti, can you speak? Because let's say that if I have if I'm afraid of the fact that the system trivializes the developer set balance within the game, how would you answer that?
So we're not forcing anyone to use it in the first place.
Well, that's a good answer, I think.
Yeah.
We could start with that.
But I think the biggest thing is that we balance the game without any modifiers, but we have also been testing the game with bunch of different settings. There are tons of different permutations, so you can definitely find a sweet spot where you can mitigate certain challenges. So they aren't like global settings that just make the game easier.
Right.
They're addressing more specific things like the damage you take or how much corruption you can cleanse, and this change is just one part of the game, so it's not like everything will be easier. And with this, I believe that the players will find those types of friction that they want to make easier, or even add more if they are enjoying those.
Absolutely, and I think it's one of those things that once you play more and experiment, because a lot of the weapons, especially the Eclipse weapons, have the corruption, negative sort of buffs or debuffs, then that really adds on to the gameplay. One of the key ones for me is the dash cooldown, for example. Once you start messing with the dash cooldown, you really feel it.
Yeah.
Like it changes the rhythm that you play the game. But again, before, when I just see dash cooldown, it does not maybe register in my head. But then once I start playing with it, I'm like, okay, that's either something I can live with, or it's something it's absolutely not my bag. So I need to kind of first you need to test and understand before you can just start, turning all the modifiers on and everything.
And that's the reason why we don't give them from the get-go. Like the player needs to understand the context and have a better idea what the modifiers are doing, how they can affect the gameplay, and especially with the trials, like. The experience you just explained that the dash cooldown messes up the rhythm. That also happens with certain guns, that they play very differently, and when you start using those the first time, you kind of lack some of the skills because the rhythm is different, and you need to get to used to like playing that way. And once you have the skills, it becomes a lot easier again and manageable. So I think most of the players probably end up switching the modifiers, trials, helpers along the game. Like they won't keep using the same ones all the time.
Yeah. And like I said, if you're trying to gain currencies, keeping those on makes sense. But if you're trying to get through a certain situation, then maybe having temporarily those turned off. Yep. That seems like a very logical way of looking at the basics of it. But of course, there's many more things for us to unlock.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things is that, like, if you really want to challenge yourself, we have the modifier that disables the permanent progression, and like it's more based on skills then, that you just need to figure out how to play the game, and that's always an option. But I don't expect too many players completing the game like that.
How about we swap players and then we can talk a little bit about enemies and all kinds of things. So Abebe, you are in this is the Black Dam portion of the Blighted Marsh, if I'm correct. There's a lot of these aiming, long cooldown turrets here, and of course each biome has their own new enemies. Can you just talk a little bit about what the thematics of maybe this biome are from that perspective?
Yeah, so there's three main kind of families of enemy in the game. We have the organic enemies, and then the mechanical enemies, and the cosmic enemies.
Organic, mechanical, cosmic.
Yeah, I believe they're called the... I forget the official term for them, actually.
It's okay. We're still learning
We're still
them.
learning, still using the dev terms.
Just
but,
FYI, we usually speak on many different layers of terminologies internally, and then the last minute when the game comes out, everything gets changed, and
Yeah.
especially the marketing facing people are very confused because everybody's used to the old terms.
Like when you mentioned the boss of the third biome, I was
Yeah.
going to say, oh, you mean the mutated animal? But then I realized,
Yeah.
wait a second, that's probably not what it's called.
I
in
think
the
it's
final game.
like one of them's Legion.
Legion is the fourth boss.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to answer your question, so with those three families, we tried to kind of give each biome its own identity, not just artistically, but also with the type of enemies that appear there. So we start off in the first biome, a lot of organic enemies. It feels like you're just kind of fighting the fauna of Carcosa. And then when you go underground in the second biome, it's much more mechanical to match the backdrop, right? But then as you get further and further into the game, you start encountering these very strange cosmic enemies, right, that have been changed by the eclipse. And I believe you meet the first one in the fourth biome.
Right.
And then when we get to this biome here, the theme of this one is kind of mechanical / cosmic. So you have a lot of these kind of turrets, a lot of these smaller mechs, a couple of the giant mechs filled with artillery all over the place. But now it's woven in with this cosmic presence, right? So you have the the guys with the pyramid on their head dashing at you, firing this big stream of bullets.
More abstract visual and quite different attack patterns and everything.
Yeah, for sure. So with the cosmic enemies, we tried to give them their own identity also from a gameplay perspective. So that those enemies can kind of teleport around the stage, for example. They can use these kind of cosmic portals to move very quickly.
Yeah.
But also they do more complex bullet patterns in the sense that they can kind of control the bullets at will, right? So they throw out this single bullet that splits into a pattern in midair and kind of drills down at you.
Right.
Just kind of to keep
This one,
the
right?
player, this one right here, yeah. Just to
Expect
keep
the
player on their
unexpected.
toes.
Yeah, well, this is fun because, again, the first parts of the game, you're introduced to the different colors of the bullets and how to avoid or interact with them. And then you get here and you get a barrage of, essentially, the patterns are different now. They change quite a bit. So it's interesting to see the multitude of aspects that you can bring up while still being fairly familiar. For example, we had that greenish tower there when we entered this area. That's clearly, if anybody who's played Returnal knows that that's the thing you have to go and beat up first.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing no damage at all. So I think it's, for old players, I think that's kind of a nostalgia in a way. And then for new players, well, there's layers and layers and layers to learn. How about this enemy? That's a mechanical one, right?
Yes. So this is an enemy that the player has encountered a similar version early in the game. And that one fires kind of 3 volleys of bullets they can absorb with their shield. So this one is a bit of an escalation of that. It has a similar shape, but when its cannon pops up from the top, instead of firing volleys of bullets, it fires a single beam.
Yeah.
So one thing that was really important for us in designing the combat was kind of this hierarchy or different role of the different attack types. So Matti touched on how the shield kind of changes combat with the bullets. But early on in development, we realized that we need something that also counters the shield, because you don't want it to just be all shield all the time, right? So
That would be boring.
So part of that is the corrupted bullets that have that kind of downside. But another thing are the Nova projectiles. So the red ones you see, those ones will kind of drain your power as you get hit by them. And then at the highest tier, you have the beams and the kind of melee attacks.
Yeah.
So the beams, of course, like this guy here, if those touch your shield, they'll really quickly drain your power and then shatter your shield. And enemies, some of them have like literal physical strikes. They'll like slash at you or jump at you. And if those hit you, it's like one shot and the shield's done.
Yeah, exactly. So the shield, in the beginning of the game, you learn to use the shield, you learn to rely on it, and then once you get to this area, then all those expectations are taken away from you and just...
Well, it's still very useful. So for example, if you look at this pattern here with the pike, this little guy here, he sticks in the ground and fires beams in 4 directions.
Right.
So he becomes this kind of rotating sprinkler of death, right? But each pattern has to be kind of like a challenge, right? It's not just about punishing the player.
Yeah.
So in between each of those kind of pinwheels of beams, there's a stream of bullets coming out. So if
Yeah.
you can position yourself in between those beams, you can pop your shield and get a nice little top up of power too.
Right. Right. That's true. Yeah, sometimes I forget to use the shield personally, but then you see enemies like that that feel like they're offering me the ammunition that I just need to, gather.
We make you work for it, but it is there.
Clearly, but again, I think some enemies are more indicative of, like, this stream of corruption bullets. It's clearly there to be collected, right?
And that was actually one of the patterns that we use for measuring like the power generation, how much power you get from different kind of patterns, that we really incentivize running along the pattern rather than staying still and just blocking the individual bullets there.
Yeah, because they freeze in place or almost freeze in place.
Yep.
So instead of continuing on that trajectory, which would mean that it's optimized for you to stay still, I'm guessing you guys would prefer to incentivize movement
Exactly.
whenever possible. Is there any place in the game where movement is not incentivized? I guess not.
That's a good question. So I think when you have a game like ours that's super dynamic, you're moving around the whole stage, you're not behind cover, you're jumping over stuff, it can be very interesting to sometimes mix that up.
Sure.
So for example, if players remember, hopefully their first death is to this giant enemy at the end of the prologue.
Which is
And-
the kind of tutorial boss fight.
Yes. Designed to probably kill you, but you can win if you're really good.
Yeah,
I have maybe a 25% win rate against that guy. So it's pretty tough.
there you go.
But one of the patterns there, for example, is this giant web of dark bullets. So, Nova bullets.
Right.
Nova projectiles. So the property of those ones is not only can you not absorb them, you can't even dash through them, right? So in Returnal there was a similar bullet type, but we have it here as well. And with that one, you really have to be really careful about your positioning. So because the net is so kind of tight with very few openings, you really have to really stand still and just find the perfect spot to let the bullets kind of wash over.
Right, and it may at point feel like traditional bullet hell where, incremental, minuscule control is key
Yeah.
to going through a very thick pattern, if you will. Kind of just
That's a really great point. Like one of the things we learned from the arcade roots of the bullet hell genre is the concept of macro dodging versus micro dodging, right?
Yeah.
So if every choice became run to the right or left and the bullets don't hit you, that also can get boring too.
yeah,
So at
because
times
it's like strafe to avoid is a cure-all kind of thing, and
yeah,
but then you have to create the alternatives to that.
yeah.
And
exactly.
while the movement is a really good way of avoiding damage, movement just for the sake of movement isn't necessarily always the right thing, because you want to learn the patterns. You want to read the scene and the behavior of the enemies. Oops.
There's always crevices to fall into,
Yeah.
right?
So
Also,
just running around like prevents you from actually learning what to do better. So I think it's important to think the movement as a part of the rhythm game that you're playing. That do it only when you really need to, but like don't just keep running.
yeah, and it's a part of the way that you interact. I think the rhythm game is a very good example because the basics of it feels like a rhythm game, but then the further you go into it, again, you're gaining more control and precise control. Like you said about the auto hit or the auto aim, that's a system that gets you comfortable with the movement first. But then once you get really good at the game, the aiming side of it is the thing that you start maybe focusing a bit more on. Not necessarily you have to or anything, but again, it's just an indication of your comfort level at each phase of the journey, as you pick up more weapons and so on.
I think it also depends a lot on the play style, right? So some players might enjoy that, maybe be a bit more cautious, but then focus on the aiming.
Yeah.
And there are some weapons that can really benefit from that. But I think it's also fine, even at really high level play, to have a weapon that just is kind of, spray and pray kind of style.
What's your favorite weapon?
Mine personally,
Yeah.
I would have to say the bowgun.
The bowgun is a very precise weapon, right?
Depends on the variant.
Right.
So each weapon has 3 different variants that have slightly different properties. What I like about the bowgun is
And
because
which one is this gun?
this is the chakram launcher.
Right.
Let's see. Yeah, the ripsaw chakram. So Matti can demonstrate this one just to briefly go over it.
Yeah.
I would say this is probably the most kind of out there weapon in SAROS. It's really, really unique. The concept is that you have these spinning discs going around your character, and you launch them out at enemies. And each of the variants is quite different with this weapon, but the one that you have here, the first one you find, the ripsaw, it's all about getting those discs stuck into enemies.
Right.
So you want to launch them, get them stuck into an enemy, and then rev that engine, which deals damage over time to them.
Which is quite at the opposite end of the bowgun, which is at least some of the variations are not exactly snipers, but closer to like aiming centric.
Yes. So there is one bowgun, for example, where all the bowguns have this concept of payload.
Right.
So when you hit the enemy, it can spawn additional projectiles that can home in on the enemy you hit or even other enemies around them. And one of the bowguns, which is my personal favorite, it spawns the payload when you hit a weak point. So it just feels really satisfying to hit that weak point and see this explosion.
Incentivizes headshots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
With the chakram, for example, so this one is more about kind of crowd control, managing where your chakrams are. But there's other variants that have different kind of specialties. So one of them, for example, also interacts with weak points, where you launch out a disc. If it hits a weak point, it comes back really fast. So you can kind of bounce it back and forth, kind of like a yo-yo.
Nice. Yeah, I have. This is actually the weapon I've played with the least so far. I'm interested to learn the different aspects of the variants. And correct me if I'm wrong, every weapon type has 3 variants.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they have modifiers, buffs and debuffs, etc. So the overall variance is quite more.
Yes. So every weapon has multiple traits.
Yeah.
Similar to Returnal, that modify the base functionality. But there is some randomness there as well. So when you get a different weapon, it might not be the exact same as a different one.
Yeah. Maybe we switch back and I can ask Matti a little bit about what your favorite weapon is. Is it this one or is it something totally different?
I usually favor the shotguns. I really love the feeling like running next to the enemies and just
In honor
blasting
of
them.
Matti.
Like I'm kind
Let's
of
take
using
the
them
shotgun.
closer to like a melee weapon. That I just get next to the enemies, and especially the stagger gameplay.
Well, do you use a lot of the melee with the shotgun then?
Yeah, because the shotgun works really well with the melee because of the stagger.
So how does the stagger? Is it only certain proximity trigger or what's the?
So certain guns deal stagger damage. Shotguns typically do it. There are a couple of others with traits that also deal it, but it's a additional bar on the enemies, like below the health bar. When you fill it up, the enemy gets staggered. You can see them flashing and they are disabled for a moment, like this.
There you go.
And then you deal, especially after you have unlocked the stagger burst upgrade. Was it named like that? I think so. Anyways, when you unlock that ability, you can deal massive damage when you melee hit the staggered enemy.
Right. So
and then that even
combination.
combines with certain artifact effects that when you melee kill an enemy, you can stagger nearby enemies, or staggered enemy. You can stagger other enemies, and then you can just combo these and keep.
Do we have stuff where you
enemies.
can get more health from melee or?
Yeah, there are certain things. At least power, you can get more, and finding these synergies and the perfect build that works for really melee heavy gameplay. That you stagger enemies, run next to them, keep hitting them, and especially towards and there are plenty of more interesting things that you can unlock.
For sure. Let's even run into the first biome. We can show the back door, because the back door entrance here, I think, to the passage, which is the hub now in one of the later iterations of visuals that you can see here. I think I always feel comfortable with this doorway. To me, this is like your backyard.
Yeah.
It feels like you're leaving home, going on a journey.
How dangerous are the backyards in Finland? Wow.
Well, it's not exactly like this, but the feeling of leaving through that exit is more akin to kind of homeward bound journey, except that slightly different fauna.
It definitely has a bit less pressure. Like after you have played multiple biomes, like it's fun to go back. And
It's like a
especially
comfort run.
Yeah, and especially if you're stuck, you can also do like multi-biome run, which gives you extra power.
So let's speak on that. Returnal was notorious for having certain rule sets that only after 3 biomes does that level or biome progress sort of start again. So you have essentially a save point in the middle of the game,
Yep.
and that's the only point of return. But here it's a much more accessible, friendlier system. But like you said, you can do a long run. So technically, how far could I run from this first level? Do I need to stop at some point?
There are certain points where you have to stop. There are certain moments in the game where the narrative takes you to different places, and like the first experience is kind of
it's more
curated
sectional,
experience.
Yeah.
But eventually you will be able to run through most of the biomes in one run.
And that's kind of the cool part about it for replayability, is that yes, there is sort of sectional things with narrative beats, and you have to go back to the passage and you do a lot of the learnings, but then once you know a lot of the things, you can actually do these long runs where then you actually do accumulate more stuff.
Yeah, but it also comes with the risk that you might lose more. So
that's true.
You need to be comfortable with that risk that I'm going to keep going and see how far I can get.
But it's more like a Returnal type feeling to some extent.
In a way.
Yeah.
But it is also a really good way of like getting extra power, that if like instead of keep playing the same biome over and over again, if you're stuck, like you can just go back a biome or two and get some extra speed.
Now there's a lot of new things. Of course, Returnal is a great genre reference for us, but this game is very, very different. I think the players will be surprised to some degree that some things have changed, but then again, I think many of us will be very comfortable knowing that there's a lot of the things that we've kept.
Yeah.
Anything come to mind where you had to make a decision where you're like, okay, let's keep that, or let's improve on that feature, or letting go maybe of something in the game?
For me personally, like I really loved in Returnal, like turning the Silphium into resin. So I usually avoided picking up the healing items until I had beaten the encounter or even the full biome, and then just go pick up everything to maximize my health. Like that was really...
It feels so awesome.
Yeah, but it is high risk, high reward type of gameplay. Because of the permanent progression, obviously we had to figure out a different way of achieving these goals and strategies, because like you keep gain more and more health, and we cannot let you convert all the healing items into permanent health.
Exactly.
So there are different kind of approaches to these, like risk versus reward choices.
But I think that's a wonderful example, because many Returnal fans will notice it.
Yep.
Maybe not immediately, but at some point. But then again, once you think about the implications of that feature in this game, you do realize that there has to be alternatives. There has to be new ways of doing it. And then it also kind of makes Returnal special in a way.
Yeah.
That there is uniqueness to a lot of these entries.
And to me, it was like really important that we always think about like going back to Returnal. Maybe SAROS is the first game you play.
Yeah.
You love it, you want to play more, you can go to Returnal. There needs to be certain amount of like similarities and safety there that when you start Returnal, you love it. Maybe even players who bounced off from Returnal, like they want to go back because maybe SAROS helps them learning certain skills or seeing the game a bit differently.
Yeah, and to me, they're always just, in the bigger scheme of things, of course, the back of the box looks a bit different, but these are character studies. These are very personal character studies that reflect the way that the game plays as well.
Yep.
To the protagonist. Where are we, Abebe? You're about to get overdrive. And by the way, do you guys use your overdrive now? Because when I started getting it and when I'm playing, I always immediately used it. But do you get to reflect on it a little bit? Do you save it for later?
I usually use it to get the healing items because
Right.
enemies killed by overdrive are more likely to drop the healing items, the ether.
So
it's-
the utility factor is actually bigger for me as well. Like getting healing, it deals a lot of damage, but I also use it for healing. So I usually target a lot of smaller enemies. Like more enemies you have, the better, because it spawns more healing items for you. So
it's just fun to see a lot of these throwbacks because, for example, Resogun was my first game here at Housemark, and then Overdrive, and the way the classic tropes work and the naming conventions that you still see, it's just a good way of seeing the culture still carry on, even though now we're very, well, somebody might say that arcade is very much alive, but in the end it's different. It's different, but it just changes shape a little bit. What are we looking at here, Abebe?
Here is the first boss.
All right.
I love this. When you like really learn the patterns and the behavior of the boss, this becomes like a rhythm game, almost like a dance game where
This
you
is
do
the-
very like limited movement and you know exactly what to do. Like I love it, and like being able to beat it without taking any damage, like that's fun.
A dance game with such a beautiful partner.
This is the bullet ballet definition, I think, at least to me, because the way this boss, it's again one of those comfort bosses that it's not the easiest thing, but again it's not overwhelmingly aggressive, and you kind of can step by step get into it with the different phases. But like you said, once you've played the game a bit more, this one becomes in a way the easy to approach one that you can always have the memory of, or how do you say, the reflexes stay with you.
Yeah, this is actually really well crafted, like skill check that it asks you to master certain things like jumping during the combat gameplay, additional targets, but also like this boss changes completely depending on whether you use the shield or not.
And the weapon kind of, at least to me, at least now, well, maybe not as much, maybe the visuals are pushing me here.
And especially these, like once in a while there's a blue pattern, you can block it, you can get your power weapon, and like it's really well done.
Yeah.
It teaches those
That's
certain core mechanics really well.
A part of the dance that really I think you can start seeing is the fact that here, especially when you see the blue orbs, you're kind of ready to take them on.
Yep.
Like, give me more power.
But it also demonstrates the weapon progression quite well, that now you have the vacuum bomb trade on the rocket launcher, which effectively sucks all the enemy bullets into it, so you can kind of disable some of the attacks momentarily.
Right.
And that again changes the challenge quite a bit because you have more time to do damage.
There's so many layers that even, well, I'm learning about a lot of these traits as well. I pretty much have most of the weapons down, but then you get into the specialties and traits. It seems to be like an endless well of just cool stuff that I'm yet to see even.
Yes, if you look at what's happening here, I'm actually erasing a lot of these patterns before they can fire.
Man.
But that has some risk too, because now I'm missing out on those bullets.
Right, so
I can't absorb them.
yeah, so it's exactly risk and reward.
And the last fun layer of this boss is that if like the first time the players face the corrupted bullets, they are a threat. You get scared of them. You don't even have the skill to absorb them at first, so you just keep accumulating the corruption. It's difficult to get rid of. But once you have that skill that you can absorb them the same way as blue bullets, but you just take the corruption, this boss becomes so different because you can block many of the attacks.
Yeah.
You can just keep blocking, and the corruption doesn't kill you. So this is a good way for the players to really learn the like corruption mechanic and how to deal with it. That it's not always that scary.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a skill check, but it's a skill check with multiple layers.
Yep.
Because then as you come later, you realize that, oh, right, I can do this now, or I could always do this, but it's just the way you approach it. And I guess that's the biggest thing about games like these is that it's all about skill and then your comfort levels with the next skills, and then it's a toolkit.
Yeah. And this is like, for example, this boss, it's a really good way of learning new guns. Like now this chakram that you can just fire the chakrams there and keep dealing damage. Like, you know the boss, so it's safer for you to experiment and figure out how the guns work instead of going to the most challenging biome available and struggling there. So it is fun to come back to the previous biomes, even the bosses, and really discover new ways of playing.
So kind of, let's say maybe this is an ending note. Maybe would you, Matti, recommend that people just jump around, and if you feel frustrated, go back to the different biome? Or is this a game where that's not only allowed but kind of built into the system?
It is definitely intended that you can do that, especially just playing one biome, like earlier biome, collect the Lucenite, go back. Probably you learned something, but you also got some resources and you can upgrade. So it is better to play that way than keep like struggling in one biome, because we want to make sure that like the frustration doesn't kick in. Like repetition fatigue is one of the challenges in these kind of games where you have to repeat and you end up seeing the same places over and over again. So having a good reason to go back and take it easy for a while, like that's always fun.
Yeah, and you feel like you have multiple outs.
Yeah.
Rather than being stuck at a very singular, kind of a bottleneck situation. Maybe you hand over the controller to Matti, and then I can still ask anything special for you, Abebe, in terms of something that surprised you, memorable moment, playing the game or developing a certain situation. This, for example, is my favorite biome, just because the first time I got to play it, the atmosphere felt so. I got into it very differently than most of our other biomes, and it feels like a Batcave type of.
Yeah, I was constantly surprised by just the amazing visuals that the team put out. It's always nice when you see this enemy go from just being a very rough kind of, block to taking shape, and everything gets these nice visual treatments, right? So like when Matti is like staggering these enemies, they have these red sparks that go all around them,
Yeah.
But I would say the thing that really surprised me the most just in development was there's one boss that I'm really proud of, which is the one you mentioned earlier, the Legion.
Yeah.
And that boss, I think, is only really possible because of Housemarque's kind of particle system, because the boss is made entirely of particles.
Right.
It's this kind of swarm of smaller enemies you've encountered individually, but now you see them in this massive swarm, and they're making all these formations. And what was so fun about that one is, design, it's not always, you don't just write a spec and then execute that exactly as it's written on the page and you're done. It very rarely goes that way, There's an aspect of iteration, but also of discovery. And that was one of those bosses where the boss kind of showed itself to me as we were making it,
Right.
Because once I could see like what it was capable of, we thought of new ideas for formations, right? And then when that was given the visual treatment with all the tentacles and whatnot,
then it all comes together.
It really came together.
See, that's a wonderful thing, and in a way that the way you described it as well feels to me like one of the bosses from Resogun, which was very much, well, all the bosses there are very voxel based, but then one of them, for example, felt like it's a more of like cosmic blobs of voxels, similar to our particle systems here. So again, it's unique, but it's also sort of a throwback to bosses of yesteryears.
Yeah, and I think game dev is the most fun and the most kind of rewarding when there's that back and forth, where you have an ambition as a designer that tech can realize, but maybe tech has a cool idea that you can turn into a mechanic or gameplay too.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of house mark, emphasis on the first word, that we are in this house where we're kind of with all our peers interacting in a space where conversations can take place and need to take place. So it's a unique opportunity for us to share those ideas, and it doesn't have to be individuals or teams in their silos coming up with these ideas, but you can just go to the cafeteria, talk to the VFX team or talk to these people, and then come up with some of the solutions that really take things to the next level. And hopefully I think that will be a part of Housemarque culture going further into the future as well.
For sure.
I really appreciate you guys sitting down here and playing SAROS with me. Well, actually playing it for me, because I didn't get to hand the controller at all. But
Playing it at you.
yes, playing it at me on this big screen. Thank you so much for everybody for playing the game. If you don't have it yet, go get it. It's available for PS5 and PS5 Pro right now. Matti, Abebe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.